Hey everybody, this is Cecil. Today I'm going to be talking about the movie called Krampus. This is the latest movie from Michael Dougherty. You remember him. He did that really fantastic Halloween movie called Trick or Treat that unfortunately went direct to video and not as many people saw it as they should have. But anyway, this week I'm going to be joined by Nyx Fears.
Hey everybody, I'm Nyx Fears. I have no idea. I always I end up on things like this and I have no idea how to start, so I'm usually just like, hello, so here I am.
And if you want to check out his stuff, I'm going to put a link to his website right down in the annotations, so head there. He does horror reviews, talks about all kinds of stuff. He's a cool guy. So thanks for coming, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Super excited. I was planning on seeing this anyway, regardless of the review thing, because people have been chatting me up for the last 2 months, like, are you going to see Krampus or Krampus or whatever? And I was like, yeah. I mean, I like Michael Dougherty. I'm terrible at remembering how to pronounce his name, but Trick or Treat is one of those little gems that I think is sadly overlooked, and I like B horror titles, and the other thing that I like are horribly cynical Christmas movies. So this is both a horribly cynical Christmas movie and a B horror title in a way. So it's everything perfect.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I have an affinity for Christmas horror movies because there's a lot of them out there. Black Christmas probably being the most well-known of the bunch, but you've got You Better Watch Out, and of course, Christmas Eve, yes, Silent Night, Deadly Night, which may be a little bit more, I would say, notorious than Black Christmas.
Right, and don't forget, Silent Night, Deadly Night 2, which has the greatest line in cinema history, where the guy's like, garbage day!
One of the most wonderful and just completely random things ever. People know that line more than they actually know what movie it's from.
Yeah, probably. I've showed everybody that clip. I've probably watched that more than I've watched the movie, so.
If you watch that clip, you really don't have to watch the movie. But anyway, so the movie just opened this weekend. So, what'd you think?
Well, it was one of those things where, if anybody knows me, I'm pretty much hypercritical of things. I have a tendency to do that, but I wouldn't consider myself somebody who nitpicks stuff to death. I hate online critics who just sit around and nitpick stuff, and it drives me nuts. You have to see it as a whole, so I accept the fact that it's probably going to have some issues that I'm not going to much like, but I still want to have an enjoyable experience, and that's exactly what I got. I knew from the opening moment, the opening 3 or 4 shots, that I was going to really enjoy the movie, and I did. It's not a perfect movie or anything like that. There are some problems that kind of irked me, but for the most part, it delivered exactly what I wanted, which was a fun Christmas movie with some really ingenious ideas that kind of played off the cynicism of a lot of my favorite Christmas horror movies, or at least it's using the time of the year in its most proper way. Cool.
Yeah, I felt I really enjoyed it too. I was worried because there's always that initial fear when they talk about they have an embargo, so nobody can review the movie until it's officially released. They don't they don't screen it for critics, and a lot of times that kind of is bad because that means that the studio doesn't have faith in the movie. However, the studio didn't have faith in Trick or Treat, which is why they dumped it straight to video after sitting on it for years. So I always am willing to give the movie the benefit of the doubt, especially if I think it looks good. And same thing, within the first few minutes, I was smiling. I was really enjoying it. It opens with Black Friday, and it's just people being trampled and running, to get to Christmas stuff, and
people getting tased.
Yeah, people getting tased.
And another thing is, it's all shot in slow-mo, and it's beautiful. And if anybody's ever tried to attempt to actually make a slow-mo sequence, you know that it's incredibly hard to light and shoot. So that I really applaud them for going that route. and it's like immediately ironic, and it sets the tone for the movie like really, really well. I feel like one of those things that I constantly complain about when I see movies is the opening image isn't strong enough to hook me immediately, so I start to kind of lose interest in it. This got me right away because it went there with the opening image, and that's actually one of the things that really surprised me about this is I when I was in the theater, I was watching the movie, and before I was watching the movie, they were playing trailers, and I watched the trailers. We saw a trailer for The Forest, that wonderful January classic that's coming out, and I was thinking to myself as I was watching that trailer, like, wow, this looks flat and boring. The colors don't look very good. Like, it doesn't look like a very well shot movie. And then we get to this, and there's like lots of really great shots immediately following the slow-mo Black Friday thing. The first shot of the movie is like a 2-minute uninterrupted shot. That's really cool. They actually treat it like they're making a film instead of just who cares. Like, it seems like they did a lot of storyboarding and a lot of work to make sure that it got the atmosphere and the tone proper. And then when you get later into the movie, and I'm going to try not to spoil that, but from the effects that they do, the special effects, it pretty much confirms that they put so much effort into a little horror movie. That's not something you really see all that often anymore. But oddly enough, I feel like this year we have kind of seen that a few times. But this is one of the better examples.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I thought that the color palette for it was very bright and very cheery, and it brought back a lot of memories of older Christmas movies. So it felt very much like more of like I don't want to say a family movie, because it's not really a family movie, but it had that like warmth that you got from like those old like 80s Christmas movies before everything got color corrected to death. It was lots of reds and greens, and everything popped really nicely. They put a lot of work into that. Like you said, I feel there was a ton of storyboarding put in. It felt like they actually put some effort into it. It wasn't just, okay, here's this movie, we're going to slap it together.
Right. Boring character walks into a room, sits down, shot, reverse shot. They talk about something that's going to happen. It's like, I hate the way modern horror movies are shot. This was like, there was a lot of movement. People were doing things, lots of characters, which is another thing. There was a lot of craftsmanship here. And that's what I thought about Trick or Treat too, where, you know, I know that there's people that are divided on Trick or Treat. I don't know a lot of people that don't like it, to be honest, but I can't not like that movie because it really does set the standard for how these movies should be shot and how they should be executed. It's like, it perfectly encapsulates the charm of why people make B horror movies. Like, it totally gets the tone right. And the guy's made 2 holiday horror movies, like a Halloween one and a Christmas one, and he gets the atmosphere of that holiday, the spirit of that, just absolutely perfect.
Definitely. Yeah, he really, I don't know much about him beyond the Trick or Treat, but he definitely seems to have an affinity for the holidays, and it comes through in his filmmaking. And again, it's appreciated because there was just definitely craftsmanship behind the lens and just a lot of work that went into it. And for a movie like this that had so many characters, I mean, they had a house filled with people, you know, with kids and with adults and stuff, and to kind of have that, so you didn't know the intimate details of every character, but you did kind of get to know, okay, well, you know, this kid's a brat, this little girl is acting like a boy, this kid, he still wants to believe in Santa Claus, like that kind of thing. The grandmother who was awesome. I really enjoyed her segment. I thought that was completely unexpected.
Oh, you mean the animated part?
The little animated segment.
Oh, yeah, which they totally didn't have to do. That's the other thing, is like, they didn't have to do an animated segment like that, but they did, and it's like genius in the fact that they just were like, yeah, we're gonna have a really neat, like, professional-looking animated segment in the middle of our horror movie, and it's just like, whoa, I've never seen that before.
And they probably saved a ton of money too, because it added a layer of charm to it, but they didn't have to do, you know, all the creature effects, and they didn't have to have like a whole cast full of people. They just basically had this little 5-minute segment that was just from the grandmother's perspective, and she was talking about the first time that she saw Krampus. And it was fantastic. Like, I wouldn't have minded seeing a whole movie like that.
Yeah, honestly, if the whole movie would have been animated, it would have been kind of like a Paranorman or something like that. It would have been kind of great. Only a little bit more cynical and sinister than that. But and yeah, like it really does feel like an homage to like early cynical horror movies, like A Christmas Story. Like, I get a lot of parallels to that in a way in the beginning, and then it totally subverts that. It's like, imagine a cynical Christmas movie, like, you know, ones we love, Gremlins, A Christmas Story, Gremlins 2, even though Gremlins 2 isn't a cynical Christmas movie, but whatever. And then everybody is getting killed. Like, add in like a ton of death, and you've got the movie. It's like, that's the subversive element. It's like, it takes it another step into the cynicism. It's like, well, not only do we hate like this, well, they're kind of charming, but like, these people are very hateable, just like most families around that time. And a lot of people hate their families around this time and whatever. This is a big thing. And it's definitely covered in a lot of cynical Christmas movies. And then just add in, you know, giant monsters killing people.
There were a couple of things that were also subversive that I wasn't expecting. The first thing being, with this kind of movie, you usually go in and you're like, okay, this character is going to die, and this character is going to die, and this character, and they did it like in a way that I was not expecting. It's like, oh, all right, so the children are getting killed. And then, all right, and the adults are still alive. And then, okay, well, then it's going to end like this. And you're like, oh, I didn't think that was going to happen. And then finally, again, I'm not going to spoil it. I like to try to not ruin it for anybody. But there are a lot of times where you're like, oh, no, they're not going to do this. And then they don't. And you're like, oh my God, thank God they didn't do that.
Not only do they not do that, it makes fun of that concept in and of itself. There's like, you know what I'm talking about, the very end of it. You just go, I turned to the person I was with and I was like, okay, and now everybody's going to walk out because that's stupid. And then, nope, you're wrong.
And that completely redeemed it, because it was like, oh, they had the balls to like make you think, oh, we're going to go this cliche. Nope, no, we're not. You're like, oh, wow, that's awesome. That was so cool. Oh, one thing too, I don't know how many people would have caught this. Early on in the movie, they made a Calvin and Hobbes reference. They said the noodle incident. And that was an old Calvin and Hobbes like Christmas thing. So, I thought that was, I'm like, oh my God, the noodle incident. So it just, again, it goes to show how much like just work they put into this. It wasn't just like a quick, cheap one-off. Cause I know I think the Asylum did a Krampus movie, or no, somebody did. And there's been a lot of people that have been writing me, and they're like, oh, I went to Best Buy and I saw Krampus and I thought it was that movie. And I'm like, haven't you people learned yet?
Yeah, really. How many, like, what? Have they made like 200 movies at this point? Come on. And it probably takes place in a submarine because they have a submarine set. And that's like it. So it's like Krampus plus submarine. Oddly enough, in Krampus, I caught a reference too. I caught a reference to A Christmas Story. At least I think that's what it was. When we enter the boy's room, the little boy, I'm guessing he's the main character. We don't really follow him directly the entire movie, but
he's kind of the focal point.
Yeah, I mean he's the one that arcs in the movie. But anyway, when we're in his room, there's a brief moment where you can see his bed, and on his bed is a hand-sewn Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer costume, and it looks very similar to the bunny suit from A Christmas Story. And I was like, is that a reference?
Yeah, I didn't see that. I'll have to check it out next time I watch it, because I definitely would like to see this again. I don't know if I'm going to be able to see it again in theaters, but I would not mind seeing it again. That's kind of a big plus, because I've seen a lot of movies this year, and the vast majority of them I never want to see again. So
Paranormal Activity, the Ghost Dimension.
Oh god, Paranormal Activity, the Ghost Dimension, and again, I'm going to bring it up. The front runner for worst movie of the year, which I don't see anything dethroning it, is The Gallows.
Oh my god, that movie sucks my balls. Yeah, oddly enough though, when I was watching Krampus, like this was on my mind, like Paranormal Activity 6 or whatever, that was on my mind. The Gallows was on my mind because I was thinking to myself, like, this movie, I know there's like a bigger budget behind it and whatnot, but it feels like not just the bigger budget, but the attention to detail in the shots and things like that. That's something that, like, I mean, it looks like they care about the movie they're making, regardless of how much it's going to make in theaters or how much it seems like a movie made by people who love what they're making. Whereas those like shitty found footage films look like they're made by a computer in a week. They're like plug in every single stereotype of the found footage genre or whatever, and boom, there you got it. It's a movie. Like this movie looked like it was made by people who loved it.
Yeah. One thing that definitely helps to make that effort is that, you know, you had people who cared about it, but you also had Weta's Workshop who did like the visuals and stuff. So that's why when there was CG, it looked good. It didn't look terrible. There were certain things that you knew were CG. The gingerbread men were CG. They could have done them practical, but that's one that might have been, it might have added too much time to it. But there was a lot of puppets and stuff that was definitely animatronic and looked great.
There was one monster that reminded me of The Thing, the John Carpenter movie. I was like, whoa.
Yes, very creepy. Yeah, I loved that. I thought that they looked good, and Krampus himself, I thought looked phenomenal. Like they did a really good job on making him just incredibly menacing, and then his various minions all looked really good. And I'm sure there were times that were actually CG, and I didn't know they were. Which bravo, man! 'Cause
that's the best use of CG.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole purpose.
Yeah, that is the whole purpose, is to make it so that you don't know. Because a lot of times, you know, when you're watching something like Transformers, you immediately know they're probably standing in front of a green screen. Like nothing there exists.
The actors look like deer in the headlights. They have no idea what's going on.
Well, that's just Shia LaBeouf normally.
Yeah, and that's another thing that's been missing from a lot of horror movies. And I felt the same kind of thing when I was watching the Green Inferno this year. It felt like the people that were terrified in the movie were genuinely terrified because they were looking at a thing actually happening in front of them, and it wasn't just like the director comes over and says, okay, we're going to put a violent, gruesome scene behind you, so, you know, react. It actually looks like they're interacting with the environment, and that completely changes the dynamic. So it was like the most proper use of CG. Even like the gingerbread men, like I didn't have a problem with it. It honestly reminded me a lot of like Army of Darkness. I got a lot of that. And that's great. Like that's exactly how you want to handle something like that. It's handled as a serious threat, but the serious threat is kind of comical. And that's the best way you handle that.
Yeah, because it's like, okay, they're gingerbread men, but they've got a nail gun. Yeah. And so it did make it, they did a good job of making it funny and menacing. And I thought they also did a really good job of kind of ramping up the scares, because it did start off very funny and there were funny moments scattered throughout. But then I would say probably the last like 20 minutes or so, like there was just a little humor here and there. But for the most part, it was like, oh shit, we're in a lot of trouble.
Right. Yeah. In the words of the grandma, they were fucked. The last 15 minutes are handled seriously. Like it's handled like a serious threat, and that's great. Like that's how you want to handle something like that. And that kind of tonal shift where it starts off purely like cynical and comedic, and then completely turns into this like really earnest, honest approach to the subject matter. It completely changes the dynamic, and you go with it as an audience member. It keeps you engaged. I feel like if the ending had some sort of like funny twist ending thing, I probably might have had a problem with it. And I was thinking about that as I was watching it. I was like, this does kind of remind me of Army of Darkness. And I feel like if this movie had a Bruce Campbell-ish kind of character, or a Sharni Vinson from Year Next, like somebody who just completely knows what to do in that situation, I don't know if that would have worked in this, because of the tone that the theme and the tone that it's trying to meet. But at the same time, I was thinking maybe, but yeah, I really didn't have a problem with the tonal shift about halfway through. I think it works to the movie's strength.
I have minor nitpicks with it. There was the one, the Jack in the Box puppet, which I thought looked amazing. It had this mouth that opened and there was all these teeth in it and stuff. And there were a couple of times where the camera was zoomed so far in that it felt like it was purposefully cutting off part of the monster's face. It was awkward framing. And I really wonder if that was put in there to keep it within PG-13. Like, did the monster look too scary? Did it have blood and children's entrails hanging out of it at the bottom or something? Because the framing, I mean, I know it sounds weird saying it, but when you see it in the movie, you're like, oh, it was really awkward. And that kind of just made me scratch my head. Now, maybe it wasn't intentional, but I don't know. It just seemed really weird.
I noticed that a couple times in the movie where it looks like they cropped into the shot. And I was thinking the same thing. I was like, I bet there was some kind of horrible gore effect right here that would just completely shock everybody, that it's like a child's guts all over this thing. And they just cropped into it for the PG-13, but it was bordering on it, man. It was so close to an R. And I was trying to figure out whether or not that would have been better if they had went full on R-rated. I predict there's going to be an unrated cut, because they typically do that with this kind of stuff. And I bet you we're going to see some entrails.
The director had said he was going for a Poltergeist and a Gremlins kind of thing. And the thing was, if you go back and you watch Poltergeist and Gremlins, they were practically R. I mean, Poltergeist originally got an R, and they managed to dial it back to PG because PG-13 didn't exist yet.
Scene where the guy rips his face off?
Oh, yeah. It's horrifying.
Yeah, it's pretty extreme. And Gremlins, when she puts the gremlin in the microwave.
Oh, and the thing is, nice long shot of it erupting, and then Stripe at the end of Gremlins melting. I saw that when I was little, and I was horrified. But yeah, it's not, that was not a PG movie, but it was. And the thing with this was, while they did push the envelope, I think probably better than the majority of PG-13 movies I've seen recently. They had the language was there, the violence was there, children being killed was there. Now, granted, a lot of that was off screen, but still, the simple fact that it was happening usually makes studios freak out. So I give them credit for that.
The big problem I had with Krampus, and maybe it's a nitpick, but I find it strange that the parents would not completely freak out at the idea of their daughter being caught in a blizzard. They just let her go out in the blizzard. A blizzard. and they're just like, yeah, you can go to your boyfriend's house, whatever. You'll just be there an hour and then, freeze your way on back over here. And then they go out in it, and they're out there for 4 minutes, and they get frostbitten. They come back, they're already getting close to frostbitten, and they're like, yeah, our daughter's still out there. I guess we'll have to go get her in the morning. She's a smart girl. And they're just like, okay. And I was thinking to myself, no. I'm pretty sure they would be freaking out.
They're like, well, we've got another kid. We're good.
Yeah, it's fine. We've got another one. We like the other one better anyway.
Yeah, exactly. She was kind of a brat,
Yeah, well, she kind of was.
The ending is going to be a big... divisive thing for people. It's
I thought that too.
As I was watching it, I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this. And I'm like, okay, you know what? That's pretty cool. They really didn't do what I thought they were going to do again, and it's definitely one where it can be interpreted multiple ways. I went online curious because I had in my mind, okay, this is what happened. And then I went online and I'm reading and I'm like, okay, there's 5 different ways that people think that this ended.
Yeah. And no one is sure.
And no one's sure. I wonder, even the director might not even be sure. It might just be like, we decided to end it this way and leave it up to people's imagination.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, I was talking about that right after I got out. And I mean, I'm not going to spoil it. It's really hard not to, because the ending is like, it's really, it's one of the weirdest parts of the movie, because it's doing the whole subversive thing, because the entire movie is subversion. It's like constantly subverting your expectations, which I love. I love when a movie catches me off guard and I don't know where it's going. And I felt like at every point in the movie, I had no idea where it was going. And at the end is when I really started to. And then when it does subvert my expectations for the last time in the movie, I kind of was like, should it have? Well, yes, considering the dumb angle that they try to do. Like, that's the thing. They insert a dumb ending, and then they pull the rug out from under the dumb ending and just laugh at you. And I think that's a fine way to end your subversive Christmas violent cynical movie. And it gives you a lot to think about when you leave. And I hate when I walk out of a movie and I'm like walking to my car and I can't even remember what happened or what the movie was about or the characters or anything. And I was walking to my car and thinking about all the things that I could clearly remember from the movie, including the ending. It left me with a lot to think about.
Yeah, because so many movies anymore are I mean, there's nothing wrong with popcorn movies, but there's so many movies that come out nowadays where you watch it and then you promptly forget everything about it. It's like, all right, well, what was that character's name and what happened and how did it end? Oh, geez. And then you watch it a few months later and you're like, I don't remember any of this. So it's sad. Whereas this one, it definitely had very striking imagery, some really beautiful shots, likable and not likable characters, and an ending that definitely is one of those endings that people will be talking about and dissecting for a while.
In conclusion on Krampus, let's call it a conclusion. The movie looks like a movie made by real filmmakers who cared about it, and it has a lot of charm and a lot of heart. It also pulls the punches where it needs to, and it'll leave you kind of shocked. It's great. Everybody go see Krampus. It's the best Christmas horror movie of the last while.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I genuinely enjoyed it. I liked it. I liked it as much as I was hoping I would like it. Because there's like, you go in sometimes with expectations and, they're either meet them or exceed them or whatnot. This one, I'm like, please be good. And it was good. It was definitely good. There was a lot of subversion. There was just the right amount of comedy to match with the horror. And it had the feeling of a very Christmassy movie. So this is a movie that I think a lot of people will watch, maybe not watch every Christmas, but this could be a new like Christmas classic, let's say, something that gets brought out every year and people really get into it. It's not going to be the next A Christmas Story, but it'll definitely be up there with some of the other long-standing Christmas horror movies. So if you like horror comedies and you're looking for a good Christmas movie, absolutely go see this one. So anyway, thanks a lot for joining me, man. I really appreciate it. It was good chatting with you.
Yeah, for sure. And for those of you at home, if you want to listen to more of my voice or see my face is all over the internet at a little YouTube channel called Nyx Fears. Go check it out. I have some really big stuff coming, so go look at it or something.
Yeah, definitely check them out. I'll put the link is right there. And cool. All right, and I will see everybody next time. Bagul!